What up, peeps? It's our first inaugural S&B Trading recap. Not really a recap, but a trading summary. We're going to look over some charts for tomorrow. And yeah, just going to plan a little out for tomorrow. I know no one's watching. It's just Michael, if even him. So, uh, yeah, just going to take a look at stuff. I got a little list here I'll go through. And first things first, gonna start off with the most important one, SPY, here on the 4 hour. Let's go to the daily first. I'll start daily and trim her down. So, SPY obviously was in a big uptrend. God, this chart's a bit of a mess. There we go. We're in an uptrend here. Obviously climbing, ripping these past couple weeks. We broke it here on the 30th. Really dumped the next day. It broke through this fib level. So I got fib levels drawn from the very peak of SPY to the very bottom. And it's kind of been respecting these levels, so I like using them. Yeah, when it ripped up, we had that big gap, kind of big gap. We opened with a sort of big gap on the 29th. It pushed up to 462, rejected that super hard, went to fill the gap, and it did. Let's go to the hourly. So yeah, peaked up 462. Didn't reject actually too hard, but it backed up, and then went to fill the gap, and then just really started dumping under there. And then we got to the next fib level there at 453.37, and you could tell that was a key level because look how fucking hard it shredded through that. That was that huge sell-off we had on, what day was that, the 31st? That would have been Thursday of last week. And then next day it opened, couldn't break that. We pulled back a little bit, bounced off support at 449, broke that Fibonacci level there, and then peaked up here at like 458-ish, and then guess what? We went back down to that level, broke through it, and ever since then we just been bleeding, and then we got down big time today, so I'm going to be keeping an eye on that gap. I got this little draw in here. Alright, got a gap to fill. It tried to fill it today, I couldn't believe it didn't. Market makers playing games, so from 449 up until about 449.82, so not very big. There's not much meat left on that gap. Not really worth trying to like jump into calls for it. That's only like an 80 cents move, and that move could be literally instantaneous if it goes to fill that. So I'm not going to try to front load it. I'm already pretty exposed long. But what I'm really going to be watching is here on the hourly, we held that next key level there at 445.12. 15 minute. So yeah, we tried to break through that. Obviously opened with a super bearish candle. Tried to push up. I thought it might just try to close the gap it opened, didn't. And then pushed down. We broke that level, closed under it, tried to break it, hit VWAP, bounced off VWAP, and we kind of just sputtered in between VWAP and that level. And then we broke it. We got a big fake out. Of course, I fell for this. Broke VWAP, and I was like, damn, looks bullish there. Hard break, and then a huge, fully engulfing red candle immediately afterwards. Still held that level, though. We bounced off of it, and then FOMC minutes came out, and we got some super shit show movement there. 5 minute. Yeah, so it tried to bounce off that level, went back up. Went back up actually right. That candle almost went. Yeah, it tried to fill the gap a little bit on that candle, so I was also super bullish on that. And of course, it was FOMC minutes are always a fake out, and it faked out, fully engulfing red candle, and then we bounced off 443. So I'll draw that one out. Bounced, found the little support on 443. We had a big push up, even good volume push up there. And then it tried to go to fill more of that gap, and it pushed really hard up to it, but then you could see the next candle immediately. It didn't want to fill it, so it got yanked back down. and we kind of just sputtered out for the rest of the day. And yeah, this closing candle on the 5 minute does not look bullish. That's fucking inverted candle. That's pretty rough looking. So mainly tomorrow, I'm just gonna see where we open. We have 445.14 for support. If we could open above that and test it, hold it, maybe push back up, everyone sees that gap to fill. If we open below that level, I imagine we'll just like do what we did today. Today we opened below a pretty key level at 449. Yeah, we had support here at 449.15 from Friday of last week, and we opened, didn't even get a chance to test that, just straight dumped right through it. So that was pretty obvious that today was just going to be a day of dumping. And next up, it looks like next key level, and this is like a key level here. We have it for 45.19, yeah, because it tested it pretty hard over here. Like it sputtered, it tried to get yanked down, and it bounced hard after it went under that level and was strong afterwards and just kept pushing, pushing. And then it tested that next key level at 453.39, tested it, rejected it, came back down, found support. We made this little uptrend line, and that was kind of an obvious sign. Let me get rid of that one. This red line I got here. Pretty clear sign that we were gonna dump because yeah, that was a pretty strong support line, and it over here you can tell it like tested it, and everyone saw it. Look at that, it came right next to that line. Big green candles, big buy-in. That was right before the end of the day. Everyone was like, nope, we're not going under that. And then almost an hour into the next trading session, it tested it again, had a bullish candle there with a hammer, bounced off of it, pulled back 2 candles, still holding it, and then huge red candle. And ever since then, hasn't even come close to that support line. So yeah, now we basically, I have a support line here on the top of this, and it's gonna come down a little bit. Let's see. Good Christ, I'll just draw a new one. So, yeah, we're pretty far off of that. I like using the 30-minute, 50-day moving average, simple moving average, as a good indicator for when SPY wants to dump and when it tries to retest that. And you can kind of see this is on the 30-minute chart. Uh, Back here we had this is that big dump that I was talking about. It tried to break below that level, and when it broke that level, it also broke that 50 moving average on the 30-minute, and then it bounced hard off of that. So that was a bit of a fake out. I thought about selling there because usually this 50-day moving average is pretty rock solid. And then it was well above that. And then right where it broke that, it was almost right next to this support line. And it broke it, dumped hard, and then came back up, broke it again, and we got a little bullishness after that. And then immediately, just yesterday, I just hammered right through it. Tried to break it again. Oh man, my chart gets a little fucky when I get too close. I got too many lines going on. And then, yep, just never could. And now we're way below it. So that kind of tells me we should bounce tomorrow. Right now, futures are down a little bit, but yeah, it's kind of the general idea for SPY. Um, Zoom out a little more. If we can't hold this level, it's probably just right back down to the next level. It's kind of what it's just been going down each level. Next level is a big drop actually to 429. I wouldn't expect it to go all the way down there immediately. It'll probably find maybe here at 4, obviously like 440 is a big psych level, and oh look at that 200-day moving average on the hour chart, 200-day exponential moving average, 200 EMA on this hour chart, this yellow line right here. That's usually a strong indicator because you can tell back here, all the way back here, SPY was never even close to that. Ever since it broke it, that yellow line, it kept going down, down, down. Right over here, holy shit, we broke it. Everything's looking good. Bam! It sold off of it hard. and then sell, sell, sell. Oh, back here, it tests it and sells off big time again. So if we can't hold that, and just the fact that it is just so happens to be right there at 440 is pretty crazy. So I expect everyone sees that, and that would be my target for SPY for a bounce. Would definitely be 440, and we'll mark that. All right, 40 break, set alerts. Okay, so that's SPY. Expecting 440. If not, we could fill that gap. I'd expect if it fills the gap, it'll pull back a little bit. Hopefully find support around 449, retest, and break back up. But yeah, not super bullish on SPY for the tomorrow in general, yes. But and then this 50-day moving average is up here at 451, so it's got a ways to go before it breaks that. I'd love to see a clean break of that, and then another break of 453, and then back up. But or we got our point of control right here at 455. So yeah, that's SPY. Next ticker I'm looking at tomorrow, and I'm also in, is AMD, because AMD is getting super duper oversold these past couple days. I mean, it started selling off, and then it really sold off once Barclays dropped their fucking price target. And yeah, it's just been selling off ever since. It still has a tiny little gap to fill above this candle at 105.79 up to, yeah, 105.79 up until like 106.62. So not a very notable gap. What's mostly notable is that AMD is right up against support that's held this basically this entire pullback. Uh, I would be shocked if we see it below $100. If it does test $100, bounce off, and then I'll watch for the next push because I doubt it's just gonna plummet through $100. I expect it'll find strong support there. That would convince me that it's gonna keep going down. I'd probably look at maybe getting puts there, but every time it even gets close to $100, it always bounces hard. Like right here, this is the only time it broke $100. And what did it do? It fucking rocketed out of there. And then it tried to come back down at 100, tested it, held it, and just shot up and didn't look back since then. Well, no, it did look back, and then it tumbled once it got back to this fib level. So I got this fib level from about this peak to the $100 range. So yeah, then this last candle, it barely touched 100, and then we bounced pretty hard off that. And yeah, it just kind of chops around. But right now, I'm not seeing really any gaps on the chart besides this tiny little one. No, that's not even a gap. That one's filled. But yeah, we'll see if it can hold 100. Semis have just been dying off recently. So if it's another bloody ass day for the market in general, I expect semis will get hit amongst the hardest of any of the indices, and AMD could break 100. I'll probably sell if it does. That's my risk reward. I'm here at like 103. I'm risking like $40 loss. I know it seems stupid to sell AIM, but I expect if AMD breaks 100 convincingly, it's gonna find the next level of support, which is, after 100. Yeah, it doesn't. I mean, you can just look at this chart. Bam. See, the 100's so strong because back here when it first ripped up, slowed down, it held 100. And ever since then, it's such a huge support. And under that, I mean, shit, what do we got? Like 95 and then maybe 85. So there's not much to stop AMD if it can't hold 100. So we'll see where that one goes. But if it does look to the upside tomorrow, I expect it to try to test 109. Yeah, and if we could break 109, that would give us room to 116 and so on and so forth. We have a gap. Look at these fib levels. How does this happen? I love fib levels. It's crazy. So I had these fib levels drawn already. And AMD gapped down and opened right there. No, where did it open? Opened at 116. So yeah, it opened right there at that fib level. Tried to push back past it, and that fib level rejected it hard. So that's a major level right there. 116.60, if it can break that, it's really going to plow through it and shoot right up to 118, I think. So that's what I'm looking at for AMD. What do we got next? Let's look at Chinese. Baba. Alright, we got Baba here, and Baba's the king of freaking gaps. It always gaps up, or always gaps down, and then it goes to fill those gaps. So you can see on this. God, this chart's a bit of a mess, all these lines I got going on. Turn a couple of these off. Up a little bit. Still kind of sucks, but anyways, Baba opened on a bit of a gap down. It was already in a gap. It gaps down and then it gaps down in a gap. So it's got this fat gap back here all the way from 112 clear down to 103. So it opens here at 109. It pushed down to 106, filled part of that gap, and then we found support, strong support there at 106.17. And then it tried to push up past where it opened, couldn't, bounce off that. So now we have gaps on each side of Baba. We got a gap here, 109 up to 110.30, so not a big gap, but Baba always, you can tell just looking at it, I mean, this chart is just disgusting. It always goes to fill its gaps. Never on the first push, or not never, but often on the first push it will fail too. And then it'll come back to it later and plow through. So, let's see. Gaps down. What's it do? Can't fill it. Can't fill it. Still can't. Oh, and then it gaps up there, of course, and it fills that gap. And then what did it do? It gapped up there. It looked like it was going to go fill that gap, but it didn't. And then still didn't right there. Still didn't. Goes up a little bit and then gaps down and then fills that gap on the gap down. Oh, it's just so gross. And then it bled off that day. What was that? That was the 31st, and then it gapped up big time, and then what did it do? Gapped up, and then broke that support right there, and filled that gap all the way down, almost to the cent, perfectly. Look at where that candle wicks down. Fills that gap perfectly, and then gaps up again the next day, goes up, hits resistance, caps back down, fills the gap it opened from the day before, and now here we are. We're at another gap down, so I expect it's gonna fill one of the gaps tomorrow. Depends how China looks as a sector in general, but the gap to the downside is much bigger than the gap to the upside. The gap to the downside is about 106 to 103. Yep, 103.50. So I like the downside a little more than the upside. It's got a pretty such a weird mover. It just like picks one direction and goes that direction all day most of the time. But yeah, I'm just watching both of those gaps. Probably just gonna play shares. I tried to short it today and I shorted the literal bottom of it and it bounced on me, so that's what it does. It likes to fake you out when you think it's gonna fill the gap and then it goes the other way. So I expect if it fills that gap, it'll probably bounce. $100 is pretty strong support, big psych level. If it can't hold $100, I would expect it to probably dump down around 92-ish, maybe 95-ish. It still has this massive gap from that news. It got a huge 10-point gap, so I have my eyes on that. If it really pulls back, it's going to go to fill that quickly. A double gap, actually. It's got two gaps, one back here. God, it's the king of gaps, the sticker. What next? Next up, we got Adobe. So, Adobe. Got my fucking headset. Alright, Adobe. Let's look at the daily. Adobe's in a consolidation pattern. We never got a higher high, so it's still technically in a downtrend. Actually, no, we kind of did get a higher high there, just barely. So, we got a higher high. It's just in a pretty strong consolidation. It's kind of got a wedge down here, not really sending just consolidating inside of it, bouncing around. So, and I expect it to just bounce around in these levels. See here, it broke out of it strong. We gapped up this day on the April 1st, gapped up, bounced off this fib level here hard, broke down, tried to retest it, broke down hard again, and then broke that fib level, and look at that, that fib level just so happens to be where it gapped up, no way. And once it filled that, it dumped, and then look at that, once again, we gapped down below that fib level. So right now we're holding this level at 444.31. Um, it went down a little after hours, so I would expect it to open below that. Probably gonna head for 431.52. We don't have any gaps to the downside. That's just kind of, and then 440 or 431.42 will also be bouncing off a support line that we have here that it's held up a couple times, and I expect it to bounce off of that and probably head back up towards 460 should the Nasdaq cooperate. If we don't hold that, I think it's really gonna not be pretty for Adobe. It'll probably head back for $400. And if it does that, I'd probably play it to the downside. But just one of those that got beaten down so hard from earnings. A little too much in my opinion. I mean, it's Adobe. They make a lot of money. They're a solid company. I think they're way oversold. Might not reach the previous highs, but I would expect they'll make a solid recovery. So yeah, I hope we can retest that support and bounce off of it and then head back up here towards this level and hopefully break off of that. But it's just going to be one level at a time. So yeah, that's Adobe. Let's check out Coinbase. So Coinbase, we have a pretty solid resistance line there. And you can see right where Coinbase really broke out of this downtrend really hard. Look at that. It retested that. Retested the support line there, bounced off of it. We gapped up hard. And then it hit that 206 level, couldn't break it. And retested that support line. And once we broke through that, it has just been dumping ever since. So now I look for it to break the downtrend it's in, and the downtrend line I would expect to be this. By the time it gets back up here, it'll probably be at 181 or 180-ish that it finds some resistance. And to the upside, we got to break that to get to the next leg up on that. Right now, it has a gap above it. I'll mark that. So gap up at 174 up to 176. Not another huge gap, but um, yep, it's there. So it should accelerate things if it tries to push up again tomorrow. You can tell today this fib level held up pretty nicely because what did it do on the hourly? Opened, broke it. Next candle, it tested it, couldn't break it. We came down, tried to break it off that FOMC pump, and it ripped down. And then this one wicked up to it, couldn't break it. So it looks like it'll probably go to test. And imagine that. Look at that. We got a little gap down here. So we have another gap at 150. That there. Gap filled down. Got a gap filled down at 159 to the next Fibonacci level of 156. So I expect it will go to fill that gap and bounce off that fib level. Hopefully, if we can't hold that, then it's probably going to get a little bloody for old Coinbase. And this all depends on what Bitcoin wants to do. So that's kind of what I'm looking at for Coinbase. Cross above resistance. Break. So we'll probably test this resistance around this level at 180. and hope for the break on that for the next leg up. And otherwise, just gonna watch for that gap fill. I expect it's gonna be bloody if Bitcoin's bloody tomorrow. We are oversold big time on the RSI today. God, the RSI was down to like 19 today on this. So it's, as you can tell, it's super, like, it hasn't been this oversold since January 22nd. So it's super oversold and just getting dumped on. So I expect a bounce on Coinbase. What else do we got? What else? Let's see. Coinbase. Let's take a look at the big mega caps. Apple. Baby Apple. All right. Apple, I have a lot of levels drawn on Apple, so this chart's a little ugly, but um, obviously Apple's been dumping with the rest of the market today. It's been kind of respecting these levels. Obviously, as it stairs up, it really respected these levels. Tried to break it there, resisted, came back, found support, broke. What do we do here? Tested that level, bounced hard off of it, came back, broke it hard. Same thing. Next leg up, broke it hard, came back and tested it, support, and bounced up, and then all the way up to the next level where we gapped above it, and then that gapped up and came down a little bit, wicked on that next Fibonacci level, and held it until back here on the 31st where it dumped below it and has kind of just been dumping ever since. So also has a gap to fill, didn't fill its gap. Almost every big cap has a gap to fill now. Gap fill from not that big, 173 to about 174.41. So not a huge gap. We're right at the point of control here. Um, it tested that next fib level there at 170.81. Also, this key kind of level I have here, it held at the end of the day at 171.44. So assuming we're down tomorrow, I expect it'll, if it doesn't gap below this level, probably go to test it. If we're really bleeding, it'll break through it. Mark that. Level break. Break through it, and let's see. Probably break through that and try to test 167.69. Maybe find support there. If not, then next level would probably be 166.70 for Apple. It could gap up tomorrow, and then if it gaps up past this gap, then we have two gaps to fill there. So I'd expect if we gap up tomorrow, it's going to be a selling frenzy, just in general on the market. And I'll probably look to buy puts at open if we gap up big tomorrow because I won't trust any gap ups in this market unless it's the one that ends this little pullback we're in, but probably not. Probably won't be that easy. Let's just look at the NASDAQ too, why not? So, NASDAQ, same thing. You can see where it was in this rising wedge, it held it up, and then right here it broke it, and it dumped down, held that level there, so that's a pretty key level there at 352. That tells me when it broke that uptrend it was in, it pulled back to it and held it pretty strong, even retested it and still held it. And then it was up to the next fib level at 361. It bounced off that, came back down, tested it. Also, it broke it, but then we got a fake out, pull back down, and then broke it again, and it was green from there. So it also, like everything else, has that gap to fill. It went to fill it just barely today. Like literally entered it about 30 cents. Just the tip. Just put the tip in and then pulled back. So we still have a pretty sizey gap, 356 all the way up to 359. Yeah, that's a fat gap. So that's about a full percent point gap on the NASDAQ to fill to the upside. So definitely going to want to pay attention to that. Little upside. So we'll keep an eye on that one. Keep an eye on that one. Yeah, if we can't, I expect it. It kind of held this level up, this 352.50 level. It held it up pretty good today. It did break below it, bounced back up hard above it. Then obviously that crazy candle we got and then still bounced off it and held it at the end of the day. So if we open around that level, find support, and push up towards that gap, that's like pretty good indication we're gonna break out of this down. But I mean, these tops, it's got a big line resistance line here, so it's gonna have to. Here we go. We got this line. I don't know if you can really see it. It's kind of hard to tell amongst my shit show of a graph here. But then, oh, that's the other interesting thing I want to look at. Here we go. So you can tell this resistance. I wish I saw this. Like this was so obvious to me. Of course, I didn't see this. I want to remove that fib level. All right. So this red line I got up here, clear resistance. If you started back here on December 28th, right as the market started to dump here at the end of the year, that resistance line, it comes all the way over here and it tested it perfectly. And then tried to test it again over here and bounced off of it. So we got to break that resistance line. Really got to break that. And that's going to be, I mean, that could be down over here at like 362-ish. But then just this resistance line from this little pullback we're in is way up here at like 364-ish. So it's got a way to push before I think we're out of the clear, done with the sell-off. And I expect the market will play games with it like it does every single day and give us little bumps to think we're going back up and rip it back down. You can tell just by the volume today that it was a very strong sell-off. This was the most volume we got on the Nasdaq since back here on the 16th. Literally double, yeah, about double the volume from 2 days ago, the first. That's why that was such a weak. I mean, it was a strong bounce, like upwards wise, but just not a lot of volume behind it. So not a lot of oomph behind it, and kinda I was skeptical of it. I ignored my instinct to think that we could possibly pull back because it was such a weak little bounce, and I didn't want to enter any like big puts on it. So kind of just been riding the storm since then. But yeah, if we can't hold this 352 level, I expect we'll probably see 340. So, I mean, at the rate it's going, the Nasdaq goes down about 2.5 points almost for every 1 point SPY goes down. So that would lead me to believe Nasdaq can pull back to like 341 and then bounce from there as SPY pulls back to 440. Those are just like pretty strong cycle levels. A good spot for a bounce. That would tell me if we break those that the bears are not fucking around, that we're actually going to dump back below all-time, not all-time lows for this pullback. So if that happens, I'd expect we find support at 317. If not, then we are going to come down hard and quickly. So yeah, I think that's about that. Uh, Let me take a look at Microsoft. One more bonus analysis here. So Microsoft, pretty similar. Microsoft sold off hard today. It just was not having it today. Microsoft broke that 200-day moving average EMA on the hourly. I mean, you can see how big this moving average was for Microsoft. Once it broke it back here, it dumped and then did the same thing. It tested that 200 EMA back here in the start of February, couldn't break it. Tested it again, broke it, and then dumped hard off of it. And ever since then, it was unable to break it, except back here, broke it, dumped hard again off of it. And then finally, here was the convincing move. This is what I saw, and I was convinced that this was going to be a big push because it tested it here on the 16th of March. Tested it, bounced off. Got that hammer candle. Next big green candle, broke through it. Almost held it, then sold off hard, and then finally it broke it, retested it, held it, and we pushed up ever since until today, where it broke it and could not take it back over. So That's a big line right there, and that's right around 300, big psych level for Microsoft. Obviously, any $100 leap. Basically the same exact graph as the Nasdaq, and also gapped down right below this fib level. So we have to break that key level 307. It's got a big gap up 307 up to 309, almost full percent gap. So I'm gonna be watching for that gap fill up. And if we can't hold that, then I expect we'll push down to 290. Hopefully find support there. It's also, yeah, it doesn't really have much of a, not much of a pattern, not much of a chart I'm seeing here. This line right here, 294, it should find some support there. 294. If we can't hold that, then we're definitely going down to 290. And below that, probably back down to 270. So we'll see what tomorrow brings for Microsoft. Let's take a look-see at Tesla too. Why not? Fuck it. Look at all the fun ones. So Tesla has been ripping up so hard, so fast. It still has more of its gap to fill to the downside. It gapped up hard off of that delivery news or whatever on Monday, and kind of just ripped since then. Good levels on